conservative women out there that will not be taking cues from the Democrat Party, which often cannot define what a woman is and wants men in women's sports, restrooms, and locker rooms.
One state that could decide the election is Pennsylvania. Van Jones had this to say on CNN.
We are behind in Pennsylvania, folks. We are behind. We're not where we're supposed to be in the early vote. When she says she's the underdog, she is the underdog.
Former Arkansas governor and one-time presidential candidate Mike Huckabee gives his final thoughts on this election.
I'm ready to turn the page, and that page does not include Kamala Harris again or Joe Biden. I'd like to turn the page away from the past 4 years of high inflation, uncontrolled immigration, mixed message with Israel, a terrible economy and overregulation and weaponized government. Let's get back to a place where everybody in America can feel good that their president is working for them and not working for a handful of billionaires and bureaucrats.
Floridians will decide today whether to amend their constitution and legalize recreational marijuana.
It's called Amendment 3, and if enough yes votes are counted, people 21 and older in Florida will be able to use recreational marijuana. They will also be able to possess up to 3 ounces of marijuana. Talking about this on American Family Radio, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said he's a no vote. For starters, DeSantis said this is being sponsored by what DeSantis described as a massive mega marijuana company.
The text was actually written by the CEO of that company, so it's a partial legalization. It gives you a right to possess and smoke up to 3 ounces of marijuana, which is a lot more than California and Colorado, but only if you buy it from them. So they create a weed cartel, they don't authorize you to grow your own, and then they give themselves total immunity from civil liability. And so they wouldn't have put $140 million into this unless they had a payoff on the back end. So they're guaranteeing themselves a revenue stream and hijacking Florida's constitution.
Florida is often referred to as the free state of Florida, a term or phrase that DeSantis himself has used in public appearances. But DeSantis said this is not about freedom.
First of all, I don't really care what people are doing in the privacy of their own home, but this is not about freedom, because if it was, the first thing they would have said is you can grow your own. They're not doing it. It's about corporate profits. But also, we have to be mindful of the freedom of Floridians who don't want to be involved in marijuana.
I'm Chris Woodward.
Live election coverage beginning at 6 p.m. Central here on AFR. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Tired of campaign ads, candidate rhetoric, and a mailbox full of flyers? Are you thinking of sitting out this election? Don't do it. As Christians, it's our responsibility to be salt and light. How can we influence our nation for godly values if we don't make our voices heard? Show your support for candidates who share our biblical values by voting wisely. Use iVoterGuide.com as a free tool to help you identify those candidates. Be a good steward of your vote on November the 5th. Vote wisely with iVoterGuide.com.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR on this election day. Across the country, it's Tuesday. Finally, it's Tuesday, November the 5th, 2024. Finally. Tim Wildman here again with Fred Jackson. Good morning, Fred.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Glad it's here.
And Chris Woodward.
I had dark hair at the beginning of this year.
Well, and Brother Ray Pritchard. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Tim. How you doing today?
Doing well. Give us a good word from the Bible, brother.
Well, how about on this election day, how about Philippians 4:6? Be anxious for nothing. When the great J. Vernon McGee was going through the Bible, it came to this verse. He said, our problem is we want to translate it, be anxious for some things. Be anxious for a few things. You know, Tim, yesterday, I went to the grocery store, and you could just see it on people's faces. You know, Fred, everybody feels it. We all feel the pressure, the concern, the worry, the fear. I mean, it feels.
I think everybody feels that, but Patrick Mahomes. I don't think he feels any pressure. He just drives the Chiefs down the field every time.
We're not feeling any pain in Kansas City this morning.
I was talking about the game last night.
After that overtime victory, Patrick.
But you're right. People are anxious and nervous, and anticipating what might or might not happen.
Yeah.
So, Fred, I'm sorry, I interrupted your thought. Was that? Go ahead.
Oh,
Frank.
let me just give one other thing.
Yeah.
Look, it does feel like the national blood pressure's gone up about 80 points in the last few weeks. I mean, we're kind of just almost off the scale here. So here's a good word if you believe in Jesus, and I think most of our listeners do. Be anxious for nothing. Not about the election or the outcome, but in everything. Here's God's prescription for anxious care. But in everything, including today, my friends, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving. Present your request to God. And I got a quick question and a quick answer. Where is God today? Well, let me tell you where God is today. God is where he's always been, on his throne. He's seated on his throne in heaven. When chaos reigns on the earth, perfect peace reigns in heaven. Our God's got this. He's in control. If you haven't voted, by all means, go and vote. But don't spend the day fretting about everything. With thanksgiving, pray to God. Confess your weakness. Ask God to give you peace, because he says in verse 7, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and your minds through Christ Jesus. So there's no need to give in to panic. Christians ought to be the calmest people on earth, because we know the Lord, and he holds the future in his hands. And even today, friends, we can trust him.
Amen. Amen. You know, it's I played hockey for many years, high school and college, and you practice and you practice and you practice, but you get to the point where I want to play the game.
Yeah.
I want to get on the field, play the game, and you can only practice. And that's kind of where I am. I've heard all the speeches many times, same things. I think, like a lot of people, get it done. Get it done.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have already got it done. We were talking before we went on the air. As of this morning, I think it's 81 million Americans have already voted. That is a huge advance vote. Absolutely huge. Some people are saying historic. It probably is. That's more than half of all the people who voted in 2020. So a lot of people are saying that Republicans had a problem. They weren't doing a lot of advance voting. This time they encouraged people to get out. And so some of the analysts are saying what's been and it's been showing this in the number as far as registered voters. In many jurisdictions, it's more Republicans showing up early to vote. Now, we're hearing this morning, long lines. So I think the American people are very engaged in voting, whether it's early or whether it's today. So I think we're going to see a record turnout for this election.
Now, what percentage of people have voted, you said already?
Well, 81 million.
Okay, and that represents half
the
voting
well, some
public?
people are saying that's an historic high. Well, it's at least half of how many people voted in 2020.
Okay.
Now, we may actually see close to, 190 million people voting by the time this is all over. So there's a lot of interest. We'll put it that way. There's a lot of interest, which is why, Tim, we've got a big election special here
tonight,
at American Family
tell
Radio.
us about
tonight.
it.
Yeah, 6 o'clock tonight, folks. 6:05, right after we have our newscast, we'll be on the air. Tim, you're going to be here. Ed Vitagliano, Wesley, Walker, and myself. We've got Chris and Steve taking care of our newscasts. We've got a great lineup of guests. General will be here. Abe Hamilton will be here.
Yeah.
Folks, if you're interested at all in the results, and why wouldn't you be? If you're engaged in voting, you want to find out just what happens, here's the place to be. We're on the air at 6:05 Central. Tim, by that time, a couple of states have already got results coming in. And at 6:05, we've got some of the big states like Georgia that we're going to be watching tonight. The first results will be coming in. They are saying, Tim, by 8 o'clock Central tonight, we may have a good indication of how the night is going to go for the two parties.
The early voting that's already taken place that you mentioned, will that be ready to go You know what I'm saying? As far as already being counted, or do they have to wait till after the polls close?
Depends on where you live.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some areas that are saying, oh, well, we're going to take these ballots in and we'll give you results on Friday. So we're going to have that frustration. We might as well warn people in certain jurisdictions. You've often mentioned Florida. You'll likely get the final result on Florida tonight.
Right. No, we'll see it. Yeah, you'll see Florida. I believe Florida counts as they go, which is the right way to do it if you can.
Yes.
That way I'm talking about early voting. That way you don't have to wait till. Anyway, well, we'll see what happens. We're going to be here 6:05 Central Time. Go ahead.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right,
Big night.
Chris.
We have a lot of sound that we can bring to the show today. Let's begin with this one. It's a compilation that Fox put together. It has music underneath, but it's a montage of various things that former President Donald Trump said in one of his speeches yesterday, and there is some audio as well from Vice President Kamala Harris. Clip 1.
We will never give up, we will never back down, and we will never, ever surrender. This will be the golden age of America.
With only a few hours left, we still have work to do. Hard work is joyful work. And make no mistake, we will win.
We want to go back to common sense leadership. We want to go back to Donald Trump.
24 hours to President Harris. 24 hours to make a difference.
Over the wires that Joe Rogan just endorsed me. Is that correct? Thank you, Joe.
We are not going back. We're not going back.
We will restore America's promise that we will take back the nation that we love.
Together we will fight, 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 and we will win, win, win.
Yeah, that's a smattering of some of the speeches yesterday. Yesterday, Vice President Kamala Harris spent the whole day in Pennsylvania. She had 6 or 7 rallies, including one last night in Philadelphia,
where her campaign was launched.
Yes, Oprah Winfrey was there and a few other big names. Donald Trump yesterday had at least 2 rallies in Pennsylvania, which is an indication, Tim, while we're watching Pennsylvania very closely tonight. Everybody understands Pennsylvania is one of those bellwether states, 19 electoral votes at stake there. So that's going to be one of the things that we're going to be watching tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. We got Arizona. I mean, there's just some states, those swing states everybody's going to be paying attention to.
Yep, Georgia.
Yeah.
You know, so it's going to be an exciting night. If you're one of those political junkies, this is a night that you live for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's interesting about Arizona and Missouri, those 2 states are voting today on abortion ballot initiatives. There's about 10, 11 states voting on abortion ballot initiatives.
Really? Today?
Yes. Arizona and Missouri are 2 of those states, and Real Clear Politics is counting those for Trump. So even though there will be presumably a lot of people, pro-abortion people, showing up to vote in Arizona and Missouri, Real Clear, for scientific reasons I'm not aware of, is giving Arizona and Missouri to Trump as of right now.
Oh, you mean, well...
In Nevada as well, they're voting on abortion.
Okay, I'm confused. Are you talking about the presidential election or abortion ballots?
Well, they're both on the same ballot. So they're down ballot, the abortion ballot initiatives.
Okay.
So at the top, when you pick Trump, Harris, or somebody else.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean one's going to reflect the other.
Well, it's going to drive a lot of people to the polls in those states.
I got you.
Because they're trying to decide whether they're going to make...
As if they needed more motivation to go to the polls.
Exactly.
Ray, you live in the Kansas side of Kansas City. Are you hearing much about that amendment in Missouri?
A little bit coming out of the Kansas City TV stations. Missouri is a red state.
Yes,
they're going to go for Trump tonight. Right. It's not really going to be close to Missouri. What is going to be close is the question about the abortion on the ballot there. So I think we're going to watch the abortion battle in Missouri. I think I'll watch it up in Montana, too. Mm-hmm. Montana probably is going to flip one of the Senate seats from John Tester to this fella Sheehy. I think he's going to go Republican. And abortion is on the ballot in Montana. And latest polls say it's pretty close up there.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
It's already moved. Ohio and some other states have already moved in that direction. I can read through the list. It's pretty.
Go ahead.
Okay. States voting on the right to abortion initiative today include Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, where they're voting on two things. New York has something similar to abortion on the ballot, Nevada, and then South Dakota as well. We have covered this extensively on afn.net, so do go there and check out our coverage.
Okay.
And most of the amendments, Chris, are pro-abortion amendments, correct?
Yes, they are. And they would do away with pro-life protections that your state legislature, through legislators that you elected, it would do away with those kinds of things, including in Florida. The heartbeat bill and other stuff would go away if they move down this direction later tonight.
Yeah. So in addition to the presidential election tonight, we'll be watching the results for those votes that you just mentioned.
And there's a big marijuana vote in Florida as well.
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to talk to Jenna Ellis about that at 10:30. Yeah. So we look forward to talking to Jenna because she lives in Florida. You're listening to Today's Issues. Again, Fred, tonight, 6:05 Central Time, we'll be here.
That's when we start, and we'll take you through the evening, folks. And there's just there's so much to be talking about. You know, it's an historic moment, and it was last night. Win or lose, last night's rally, I think Trump finished up in Michigan. Mm-hmm. That was his last rally. He says if he loses, he will not run again.
Right.
So that was his last rally, was last night.
Too old to run again. Yeah. I mean, really, for all practical purposes. Plus, who would want to go through that again? Yeah. Hey, joining us from – go ahead, Ray.
I just want to say give Trump credit. He was in Grand Rapids at the end of a long day. Mm-hmm. And, Fred, he started speaking after midnight in Grand Rapids, about 12:06.
Yes.
He didn't finish until 10 minutes after 2 this morning in Grand Rapids.
I've never he's 78 years old, and he gets by on Big Macs and fries.
He is the ever-ready bunny.
He just must have some – they need to study his gene pool.
He walks around on the golf course.
Yeah. I mean, for a guy – his age to have that much energy is just amazing. Of course, it doesn't hurt to have people do your clothes every day.
Yeah,
and private jets to fly around in, and a driver for your car.
And you know, last night,
it does help.
Lara Trump was interviewed this morning, and they left Grand Rapids, Michigan last night to go fly back to Florida. Lara Trump was asked. Lara Trump was asked. Okay, what was it like on the plane? Was everybody sleeping? I mean, we're talking about 2 o'clock. She said, "Oh no." She said, "Former President Trump wanted music, and so they cranked up the music on that plane.
Keep the party going.
Keep the party going."
Yeah, amazing.
Yes.
Anyway, hey, joining us from North Carolina, a swing state, if you will, is our good friend Dr. Frank Turek from Cross Examined. Good morning, Frank.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. You know, back in 2016, I had a friend in the Trump campaign, and I asked her, you know, how are things going? And so this is 8 years ago, and she said, we can't keep up with this guy. I mean, he really is the Energizer Bunny. She was amazed that how much energy he had. I don't know if you remember this. In 2016, he was in Michigan preaching after midnight into Election Day, just like he did last night.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. His makeup and his energy level, and especially for a guy, he's 78 years old. You got to remember that. Okay, who's going to win North Carolina, Frank? Where you live?
Well, it looks like Trump will, but you know, I don't care about polls at this point. People just need to go out and vote. And I've been contacting people. My friend Charlie Kirk has an app called the TP Action app. And if you go wherever you download apps, just look for TP Action. And on there, they have people around you that are people you can contact and, you know, say, hey, would you go out and vote today? So that's what I've been doing most of the morning, because it doesn't really matter what the polls say. It doesn't matter what the pundits say. It doesn't even matter what we say. What matters is, are people going to go out and vote? And so we've just got to encourage people to go out and vote biblically.
Vote? You mean the Bible tells us how to vote?
Yeah, it does. And I can tell you why. Because Jesus, when he was before the Pharisees in Matthew 23, now the Pharisees were the politicians of his day. They were on the Sanhedrin. They were a lawmaking body. Some of them were on the lawmaking body known as the Sanhedrin. And here's what Jesus said in Matthew 23:23. This is easy to remember. It's Matthew 23:23. He says, "You're tithing your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you've neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the former without neglecting the latter. You blind guides, you strain out a gnat and swallow a camel." And what's he saying? He's saying the lawmakers were doing the little things but neglecting the big things. And we're doing that in this country right now. We're telling people what light bulbs they can and can't use, but we won't say don't murder your children. You know, Kamala Harris wants to ban plastic straws, but she doesn't want to ban child mutilation. She wants to encourage that. She's neglecting the more important matters of the law. You might be able to find things on both platforms. You might say, well, I agree with this, I agree with that. But you want to look at the most important matters of the law. What are the most important matters of the law? Life. There can't be anything bigger than life. Religious freedom, our ability to preach and live the gospel. You know that Kamala Harris just came out the other day and said, we're going to need to crack down on disinformation. What is this, the Soviet Union? You know what that would mean? That would mean the American Family Radio Network, according to them, would be a disinformation network.
Right. When Tim Walz, her running mate, said the same thing. He said we shouldn't shy away from saying that the misinformation is covered by the First Amendment. Of course, who gets to define what the misinformation is? They do, the left. And you've already voted? Yes.
Yeah, we voted about 2 weeks ago here in North Carolina. I think we could vote like back in May. No, it was
election season, right? It used to be election day. Now it's called election season. Well, you know what? I'm going to vote today. I've got to vote, but I will say I've always voted on election day, except for one time when we had to travel and voted absentee. But I will say this: I think, given the number of people voting now in the country, we're so many millions and millions of people. It is a good idea to have have the ability to early vote. That way you don't have, imagine if you didn't have early voting and today the lines are 3 miles long. You know what I'm saying? So I could see the advantages of early voting as long as it has integrity to it. And so, all right. Well, listen, are we talking to Frank tonight or is he? No, we're not. We're not interviewing Frank tonight. All right. Listen, Frank, by the way, what's coming up on your show this Saturday, or do you know yet?
Well, not quite yet. It depends on what happens tomorrow or today. But I do want to say one thing. You know that George Barna said that, according to his research, that about 30 million Christians will not vote in this election. In fact, 30 million Christians didn't vote in the last election. You know the last election was decided by 42,000 votes spread over a few states? And 30 million Christians didn't vote. How does that make any sense at all?
Well,
are only atheists qualified to run the country? All citizens ought to vote. And we ought to be informed. We ought to vote biblically. Vote the more important matters of the law. It's not about personalities. It's about policies. Policies last a lot more than personalities. And I always tell people, look, if you don't like either person at the top of the ticket, and let's be honest, there are things about both these individuals personally we don't like, and they're not Christian values. We can agree on that. But I say, look, you're not voting for one person. You're voting for 5,000 people to go to Washington and put a series of policies in place. And those policies are going to direct the country for a generation.
Yes.
And we just can't sit back and allow freedom of religion, freedom of speech, an open border, abortion on demand to the very last month of pregnancy. Taxpayer-funded abortion is what Kamala Harris wants. How can we be for that?
Yeah. No, I know. Sometimes you have to vote. Well, there's two considerations when you go vote, especially for a presidential election, and that is who's going to do how can I do the most good with my vote, and how can I stop the most evil with my vote? Both are considerations, especially when you're voting for a president.
When people say, are you voting for the lesser of two evils or the greater of two goods, my answer is yes.
Right. You have to take both into consideration. And all right, Frank, take care, my friend. Appreciate it. See you later.
God bless you guys.
Okay, you too.
Yeah, like you were saying, North Carolina, where Frank lives, is one of those states we're going to certainly be watching tonight. And also, the down ballot. There's a lot going on here. We're going to be watching Senate races tonight. That's a big one, and Senate races. Pennsylvania, and we're going to be watching Michigan. We're going to be watching Ohio, Wisconsin, Montana, West Virginia. Most people agree because Joe Manchin is not running, the Democrat there, and the governor of the state is a Republican. He is. So that's a given. And why are we watching? Because it's 51-49 in the Senate right now. 51 Democrats and an independent and 49 Republicans. So one flip makes it 50-50. So then we're going to be watching all these other states tonight. And it's going to be an exciting night, folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Ray, when Frank was talking there about the voting biblically, so is Jesus a Republican? I mean, how does this work?
No, he's the Son of God.
Okay.
He's the creator of all things. He's the lawgiver. He is the one who speaks the truth of God. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. So I tell people, look, you don't have to plan to vote Republican or Democrat. How about biblically? How about take your biblical values of life and the family and marriage and love for the nation of Israel and for the freedom to educate your children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and vote to defend the unborn? And how about voting to stop the mutilation of children? So there are tons of considerations, and I think what we need are more biblically informed Christians. Jesus not a Republican, but in our democracy, you get to vote. It's you're going to vote this way or that way, so vote consistent with what the Bible actually says, because the future of America is at stake.
Yeah. And as I've said before, we can talk about this next half hour. I think one of the biggest considerations as far as impacting the country now and the next 2 decades is who gets to pick who the judges are.
Oh, it's big.
And whoever wins the presidency today, if we know the results today, but whoever wins will get to pick who the Supreme Court justices are and who the federal judges are across the land. And that has ramifications far beyond any 4-year presidency. So we can talk about that more when we get back. You're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Off the coast of the Atlantic Ocean in New England states, there are several places where ships would be in danger if they should be caught in a storm. Somewhere I read a story about a crew of men whose responsibility was to rescue the men on any ship which ran into trouble in one of those areas. There was a storm at sea and the wind was blowing real hard. The waves were extremely high and forceful. The storm was accompanied by heavy rain and much lightning. It was the middle of the night when the call came to the rescue squad that a ship was in trouble and needed help to evacuate their crew. The captain of the rescue squad woke his men up and told them to prepare to sail. As the group went out into the night, many of the men realized that it would be a very dangerous operation to attempt a rescue in such conditions. Still, the men were prepared to cast off and help the ship in distress. Just before they were ready to leave the safety of the harbor, a member of the rescue squad who was relatively new approached the captain. His face expressed much concern as he spoke. "Sir," he said to the captain, "do you think we should go out in these conditions? We might not come back." The old captain, a veteran of many years at aiding ships in distress, slowly turned to the young seaman and gave this reply: "We don't have to come back, son, but we do have to go out." Too often in life, the fear of failure keeps us from setting sail on a course of goodness. We are afraid someone might not understand. We are afraid we might not be successful in our venture, and so we stay in the relative safety of the harbor. Very few great and worthwhile missions can be accomplished without taking the risk of sailing through some stormy seas. There's always the danger, once we chart our course over the stormy seas, that we might not return. And it is precisely this danger that keeps many people from ever leaving the shore. When Columbus set sail for India, he had no assurance that he would return. Indeed, he was told by many people that he would sail off the edge of the world and that his ships would never stop falling. But he had to go because he was captured by a dream that could change the life of man for good. When Jesus began his journey from Galilee to Jerusalem, his disciples probably tried to discourage him. They knew of the possibility that he would be killed in that holy city, that he would never come back. But still, he went. He didn't have to come back. He only had to go. Quite often in life, we'll find this to be true. We don't have to come back. We only have to go.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. Psalm 27:4.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Tim, Fred, Chris, Ray. We're all here on Election Day here, on Tuesday, November the 5th. Yes, it's finally here. And all God's people say,
Amen.
Amen.
Thank
Amen.
you, Lord.
It's here. It's been a long, it seems like we're in an eternal election cycle in our country because there's always something on the horizon, on the near horizon.
Yes.
And we've been, but you know what? Who knew that it would be Trump versus Harris?
Yeah.
We didn't know 2 years ago exactly what that would look like. Hey, joining us from the, as Governor Ron DeSantis says, the great free state of Florida is Jenna Ellis, her host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio. Jenna, good morning.
Good morning, and it is the free state of Florida, so our squirrels are fine here. We haven't had any of them that have been taken out by the government and executed, so it's a good day.
That was one of the most bizarre stories I've ever read. Allison was reading that to me last night.
Mm-hmm.
Steve mentioned that yesterday. I was trying to, it was
Poor little Peanut.
Yeah, a Peanut the squirrel, which was a YouTube sensation in the state of New York. The state of New York's, do you call them animal rights people? Anyway, they went in and got the squirrel from the owner and killed it. Listen, let's just take us 10 minutes to sort through, and this isn't why we're here. Type it in.
Priorities. Priorities.
That's what
of the
Jenna's
state
talking.
Of New York.
People may have wondered what you're talking about, Jenna. That's what you're talking about. You can go on the internet and read about it. New York Post had an article on it.
Yeah. Yes. Elon has been talking, go vote and avenge Peanut the squirrel and, from government overreach, because that's why I think this story has made such a sensation, because people are saying, if New York has so many problems and this is what their government cares about,
I know.
Like a little squirrel wearing cowboy hats who's a YouTube sensation, it's ridiculous.
Ray, did you hear about this?
What was the deal? I know, Tim, you don't want to take 2 minutes to explain it, but
sorry, I got us off on a squirrel sidetrack.
I know.
Why did that poor squirrel have to die?
He didn't. That's the thing. Like he didn't. Our squirrels are safe in Florida.
Yeah.
Because Governor DeSantis loves the animals.
It's a bizarre story. Maybe we'll cover it. Go. You people can go read about it themselves. All right. So we got two big amendments in your state today. Tell us about them, Jenna.
Yes, so we have Amendment 3 and 4. 3 is legalizing recreational marijuana, which would include the constitutional right to smoke even in public spaces. This is a total overreach. And if you think about this, I mean, even for people who say, okay, well, you know, you have a right to drink alcohol, opioids, that's still regulated. I mean, you can't. There's not a constitutional right to alcohol. It is still regulated, and you still can only have that in certain spots, and public spaces, and especially private spaces, can still determine the rules and regulations of how they serve you. I mean, some places in Disney, for example, they say we don't serve alcohol because they want to make it kid friendly. But now it would be all over the park. So hopefully that one will fail. Amendment 4, of course, is on abortion regulation, and basically this is the most extreme constitutional amendment that would cement a right to taxpayer-funded abortion on demand, literally until the moment of birth, and make Florida a cottage industry for abortion tourism because the surrounding states still have good life protections. And it's been so frustrating, Tim. I saw, a friend of mine who I know here in Florida was posting, a thing yesterday, and I saw this on her Instagram saying, protect women's health care and, protect the ability for women to still be able to get health care in this country. And I'm thinking, nobody in states like Florida that actually protect the life of the child as well as the life of the mother are denying women health care. That is the worst talking point from the left, and I hope that voters in Florida are smart enough to vote no on both of these amendments. Almost 60% of Florida voters have already voted early. That was 2 hours ago in a Tallahassee paper, and Florida Republicans so far have turned out by almost 1 million more than registered Democrats in early voting. So I hope that portends well that we will defeat those two amendments.
Governor Ron DeSantis, of course, he challenged former President Trump in the Republican primary, as did Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador. Both of them came up short. Obviously, Trump won going away among Republican voters. However, DeSantis, he went back to Florida and continued to work on a conservative agenda, and he's really so I say this because some candidates would have, said, well, I'll just serve out my 2 years of governor and that'll be it, and I don't really care what happens because I'm not going to be the Republican choice as president. But no, Governor DeSantis endorsed Trump, went back to Florida, and then got busy, and he's really put a lot on the line on these amendments, really trying to work for the right cause, right?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that I respect the most about him is that he didn't take any of that personally. He just said, listen, the GOP base wants to give Trump another opportunity, and fine by me. And he endorsed Trump, and then came back to Florida and has been working hard and fighting the battles that, frankly, few Republicans are willing to stand up for because it's not popular. But it's the right thing to do. And this is where, and this is why I personally, just in my personal capacity, supported him in the primary, because he is that principled. And I know him personally and his family, and I respect that so much. And I wish that we had more statesmen like that across the country in all offices that were willing to do that. And Trump has been willing, to do a lot that is right for America. And I've always applauded him on those decisions as well. And I hope that if he is elected, that he will put people in place in key positions that will influence him to continue to promote good and restrain evil. And we just need to pray for that for our nation.
Jen, it's Fred here. I'm seeing a figure around 80 million people have already voted prior to Election Day. We're hearing reports from various places across the country where the lineups are absolutely huge, 150 people lined up at a station to vote. What do you read into this as far as the energy of the electorate for this vote?
That is a great question, and I do not have a crystal ball or reading the tea leaves more than anybody else. And, everybody that I've talked to who's been doing this a lot longer than I have say that it is too close to call, that we may not even and likely will not know the results at least of the presidential election tonight, which I think is absolutely crazy. One of the things that Governor DeSantis has done so well in the state of Florida is to kind of clean up the process. And so Florida generally by about 3 hours after the polls close, the results. That should be in every state. across the country. But I think that turnout, is attributable to how much both sides, quite frankly, care about the results. There is a lot of turnout for the Democrats, for the first female president, for the social issues. Because they hate Trump. I mean, for even abortion on the ballots. I mean, I think it's no mistake that all of these activists have abortion regulation on the ballot in 10 states to try to turn out the Democrats. But that's going to work against them, hopefully, as well, because that will drive out pro-lifers to vote against these horrific amendments, and hopefully that will have some ancillary effect on good conservative candidates and other issues on the ballot, all the way up and down ticket as well. So I think it's going to be too close to call, but likely, for what I'm hearing, it will all come down to Pennsylvania, which is very interesting considering that Kamala Harris did not choose the Jewish governor, Josh Shapiro, because of how the Democrat base, frankly, just has a lot of anti-Semitism in their base, and that was going to be kind of a thorny issue for her. And if she ends up not winning, I wonder if they will reconsider that choice. But it's just been a lot of very interesting decisions along the way. And the one thing that I reiterated this morning as well on my show was that we have to pray for peace in this nation, to continue to promote the blessings of liberty, be thankful for the blessings of liberty. But I would just encourage everyone who is really nervous about this election and the future of our country, remember that we need to participate. Absolutely. Get out and vote. Be a good citizen. But at the end of the day, remember that our identity is not in politics, a political party, or in this outcome, or even as an American, our identity is in Christ.
Amen.
Hey, it's Chris here. The media has worked really hard for months now to try to make this election for female voters about abortion rights, or reproductive health care, as they call it. But what are some of the other issues that you see and hear driving female voters to the polls in Florida or any other state for that matter?
Yeah, I think that for at least conservative women, a lot of this has to do with border security and the economy. Those are the two number one issues that I keep hearing about. And I think that's right to say that, women in particular, even the single woman who, obviously married women who are having to deal with an economy for their families and work, within the context of their family to provide for their children. That's a big deal. But even for single women that the left would say traditionally vote Democrat, they're very concerned about their safety. When you have these stories about how, young college women are getting attacked by people who shouldn't be here, quite frankly, by people who have long criminal records that should not have been allowed into this country. That's a very scary thing. And I think that is turning out voters on the conservative lines, and also just seeing the women's sports issue as well. That is a huge issue that conservatives and even feminists now are collaborating on, which I never thought would happen, that we would actually agree on something with the feminists. But they know the difference between men and women. And when they talk about women's rights, having the right for only women to participate in women's sports is a big deal. And so when you look at how the Democrats are trying to force the LGBTQ agenda, the Equality Act, all of this nonsense, for the rational voters, they are seeing that worldview contrast. And I hope at the end of the day that will tip the scales in terms of some of these elections, including the composition of the House and Senate. Let's not forget that is a really big deal tonight as well.
Yeah. Okay, Jenna, Jenna will be on tonight too with us. She's scheduled to be on. So listen, thanks so much for being on with us. We look forward to visiting with you tonight, seeing what happens in the state of Florida, and your analysis in the morning, tomorrow morning.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it. And thanks so much, guys. And thanks so much for just standing firm and always encouraging our listeners to get out and vote their values. That's a huge thing, and I appreciate AFA so much for our stand for that.
Amen. Yeah. All right, Jenna, thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks.
All right. You're listening to Today's Issues on American Family Radio. Tim, Ray, Chris, and Fred. Hey, let me ask you this, Ray. What do you think of the top three issues that the average voter out there are considering today?
It's hard to get past the economy, right?
The inflation that started out 2 years ago? Yeah.
Yes. You go to buy a tank of gas, it's so much higher than it was 4 years ago. You take your family out to eat, it's not $20, it's $50, it's $80, it might be $100, right? We took our grandkids out, just a couple of them and their parents out. With one of these hibachi Japanese places, $300-something.
Yeah.
And okay, it wasn't any 4-star restaurant. I'm saying everybody understands prices have gone up. And James Carville, I know he's a Democrat, but he taught us wisely. It's the economy, stupid. So start there with the economy, inflation, border security, immigration. I think those are probably the absolute top 3 issues that are going to be driving, and national security in a big way, going to be driving a lot of people tonight.
Go ahead, Fred.
We're living in interesting times, and Jenna just alluded to this a few moments ago, the Israel question. I think those who love the nation of Israel, love the Jewish people, are not happy with the lack of support that we have seen for Israel in its war on Hamas terrorists and Hezbollah. When the Biden administration basically told Prime Minister Netanyahu, we're going to cut off weapons to you unless you start allowing aid into Gaza. And Tim, we talked about this yesterday on the program, but it's worth reminding people. Israel would love to stop fighting wars tomorrow. They would. But they've got an enemy. They've got an enemy to their west, Hamas. They've got Hezbollah, and they want Iran, who want Israel and the Jewish people wiped off the face of the earth. They don't have a choice. It was Hamas who attacked them last October, over a year ago. They are simply defending themselves. And to have an American administration, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, threaten to stop sending weapons, heavy weapons, to Israel in the midst of them fighting for their lives, I think that just resonated with a lot of people. And they compare it to how former President Trump treated Israel, respected Israel, supported Israel during his time in office. And for a lot of people, that is one of the ingredients going into this, that I think they understand. You remember when Prime Minister Netanyahu a few months ago came to Washington? Kamala Harris didn't even want to meet with him.
Mm-hmm.
He treated him with disdain. Can you imagine if she becomes president? What is the fate? God is.
If you're an Israeli citizen today, you're very nervous that if she gets elected president, then it'll be Israel alone in the world with respect to their survival.
Oh, yeah. I mentioned yesterday there was a poll done in Israel as to where the Israeli citizens, where they stand, what do they prefer. And Donald Trump won by far in their poll in Israel.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah. What do you think about the Israel question? Do you think, I know that is a consideration, a strong consideration among people like us, Ray, who are, conservative Christians in America. I don't know the general public where that would rank, number 10, number 8 issue.
That's probably true. It's nowhere near the top, I suppose, for the average American voter. But if you're in a state like Pennsylvania, it doesn't take 2 million people to win that state. I mean, if it's really, really close, it may be just a tiny margin. So I think that could provide in these close elections, people who care about Israel, they are going to go vote. And if you care about Israel, you're almost certainly going to vote for Donald Trump. So does it have to be at the top? I don't suppose it's at the top for most people. Evangelical Christians, we obviously care about Israel, but I think when it's close election time, as it's going to be across the country, it could make a big difference.
Yeah, I do think Jenna was right when she said, if in fact it does come down to Pennsylvania, okay, who knows? It may not just be the Pennsylvania outcome, but had Harris picked Shapiro, the current governor of Pennsylvania, himself a Democrat, who is a Jew, the likelihood of her winning Pennsylvania, I think, goes way up. It's probably assured. But anyway, and And the fact that she did Harris pick Shapiro, but instead picked the governor of Minnesota, which is already a blue state, and it seemed like what you're doing is avoiding the Jew, and you're avoiding, as Jenna said. I mean, how else do you read this? You need Pennsylvania. Get the Pennsylvania governor, and you got it. You got a great shot at being president. Instead, you have to consider the anti-Semitism in your own party, the Democrat Party, when you consider the revolt you might have if you pick a Jew to be your VP among the squad and people like that who are, I call them pro-Hamas. Does that make sense, Fred?
Oh, it absolutely makes sense. Like you say, why would she go with Tim Walz from Minnesota?
Right.
Self-confessed knucklehead.
And you're going to win Minnesota regardless.
Right.
Yeah, and you're going to win Minnesota regardless. No, I think it was a calculation because Kamala Harris was worried about losing the Palestinian vote in Michigan. So that's why she didn't want to go with Shapiro. And she may lose that anyway because many of those people, those Muslims, and there's hundreds of thousands now, they are still upset with the Biden-Harris administration, with the way they see the Biden administration being too friendly with Israel. And I would argue against that. But it's really interesting. Donald Trump in the last 10 days has had a couple of meetings with Arab leadership. There's a very large Arab group in Michigan that has come out in support of Donald Trump. And you may ask, okay, why would they do that? Well, it's because they would like to see peace in the Middle East as well. And they believe that Donald Trump can bring the two parties together. Israel, he's very pro-Israel, but they also believe that he can help bring about a peace where the Biden-Harris administration have not been able to do that. And that's why he's seeing a lot of support. Very interesting spectrum of support. The very pro-Israel people voting for Donald Trump, but now you've got this contingent for very different reasons amongst the Arab population there in Michigan supporting Trump as well.
All right, you're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Next story, Chris.
Well, one of the things that Vice President Kamala Harris has tried to lead people to believe is that she is going to be tough on crime because she is a former prosecutor, or she says, I was a prosecutor.
She was AG of Attorney General of the state of California,
yes.
right?
And prior to that, she was a district attorney in the San Francisco area. So she does have a quote-unquote law enforcement background. But one of the things that she has been hammered about, we had this on the list yesterday. Maybe we played it, but I can build upon the coverage of it. One of the things that she has had people talking about for about 48 hours now is the fact that Kamala Harris, prosecutor Kamala Harris, has refused to answer a question on how she's going to vote on a crime bill that's on the ballot today in California that would stiffen penalties and punishments for people that break crimes. Listen to Kamala Harris and her reasoning here. Clip 8.
How did you vote on Prop 36?
So my ballot is on its way to California, and I'm going to trust the system that it will arrive there. And I am not going to talk about the vote on that because, honestly, it's the Sunday before the election, and I don't intend.
What?
Let me guess. She did not want to tell people how she voted because she's voting against that measure in California that would strengthen laws against the runaway crime. I dollars to donuts, if I was a betting man, I would say she voted against that measure when she sent her ballot.
Because don't you know, Fred, if she had voted for it, she would say so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That is a difference, I think, in this particular election compared to, say, 2012. I've said this on the show, and I'll probably say it again if the Lord tarries. More often than not these days, certainly in my 40 years on this earth, in many elections, Democrats run to win and Republicans run not to lose. In this particular election, she's running not to lose, which is why she didn't want to say the Sunday before the election how she's going to vote. Donald Trump, who's on every television network right now speaking in Florida, has been running to win, which is why you've seen this strange coalition of Jews and Arabs and other people coming behind him when they historically have never supported him before.
That was a really odd answer from the former Attorney General of the state of California, presidential candidate. It's an issue about crime and how to deal with crime in your home state. and you don't want to tell people how you voted?
Yeah, because it is, quote, the Sunday before the election.
What does that matter?
It doesn't.
She's
kid.
afraid that it's going to cost her votes.
Yeah,
She had to come up with an excuse.
Okay. Again, what's on the ballot there that
Well,
she's avoiding commenting on?
It would finally make California hold people that break the law accountable. It would stiffen penalties for people that do all kinds of things.
So it's a state referendum?
Yes.
It's a yes, no?
Mm-hmm. I'll post the ballot.
Okay, but if you vote yes means, so you're saying the citizens of California, by and large, put this on the ballot because enough of them are tired of the lax punishment against criminals?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so that's how Democrats treat crime. They remember no cash bail.
Yeah.
Light sentences. I mean, they don't take crime seriously.
You can steal up to $1,000 at Walgreens.
It's insane, and they lost a lot of people and a lot of businesses because of this.
Yes,
because they don't punish crime in California.
Yeah,
and so that's interesting. She would not say how she would vote one way or another.
Yeah. But like I say, dollars to donuts.
Right.
She voted against it.
Yeah. Otherwise she'd have said yes.
Do we have time for a 49-second piece of audio? Okay, well, I'll sum it up this way. Tommy Lahren was on Fox to weigh in on what we just heard from Kamala, and Tommy Lahren said, and I quote, "This is all you need to know about Kamala Harris."
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you're listening. Tell folks again, Fred, as we take a break right here, what we're going to be doing this evening.
6:05 tonight, right after the 6 o'clock news, we have our election night special. The whole gang of us will be here bringing you the latest results. And that's the important part of today is the results, and we'll be bringing them to you. We'll be here for hours, folks, tonight. You don't want to miss a minute of it.
Yeah. All right. When's the music going to pop up? And now. All right, there we go. There's the music. We're going to take a short time out. Well, I'll say short. We'll be breaking for news here for the next 5 minutes, and then we'll be back with the last 25 minutes of the radio program. Today's issues. You don't forget to vote. Don't procrastinate and wish you would have gone and run out
Vote
of time.
early, vote often.
Yes, that's
right. Chicago. Right?
That's right. Vote early, vote often. The mantra for Chicago. Remember to vote for Uncle Larry or Uncle Bill, who passed away last year. Remember to get their ballot out of the mailbox. All right, we'll be back in a minute. Stay with us.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
The American Family Association, informing, equipping, and activating to transform American culture.
Jesus commissioned his disciples to make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything Jesus commanded them.
We at the American Family Association seek to aid the church in our Great Commission.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Former President Donald Trump is hoping to win back the White House today as voting is open across the country. Trump-Vance campaign press secretary Caroline Leavitt says their team is feeling great.
We are cautiously optimistic that President Trump is going to win tonight as long as people continue to get out and vote throughout the day.
Pennsylvania is a critical swing state that could determine the presidency. Republican National Committee co-chair Laura Trump sharing some legal issues the RNC is dealing with.
Our poll watchers, if you can believe this, and I'm sure people can, were being prevented from entering the buildings in 8 different counties.
Almost 2 million mail-in ballots are starting to be counted in Pennsylvania, but results are not expected to be finalized for a few days. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger giving an update on when the country should know the results of voting in that state.
All the voting that you're seeing today, before the end of the night, you'll have all of that. Many of the smaller counties are pushing to be done by 10:30 at the latest.
More than half of registered voters in Georgia already voted before Election Day. A former advisor to President Trump believes the Democrats are prepared to do whatever they can to stall in order to delay the results of the election. Chad Groening has more.
Election Day has arrived, and while millions of Americans will await the returns with great anticipation, there is growing evidence that we won't know who the next president of the United States will be for some time. Jenny Korn served as deputy director and special assistant to the president at the White House during Trump's presidency.
They've already kind of forewarned us, right? Democrats have already started saying, well, we don't know if we're going to have the decisions. We're not going to know the results until after the election. So when they say that, we need to listen, because what they're telling you is that they are going to try to stall it. They are going to try to drag it out for whatever reasons and whatever kind of things that they want to do.
But Korn says the GOP is prepared this time.
Is it going to be lawyers battling it out? In some cases, it's going to be. But here's the good news is that now the Republicans have stepped up their legal team and their legal effort to make sure that they're equipped.
Korn says Florida ought to be the standard.
Florida is a huge state with a large population, yet they are able to get the results of their voting in on election night. That should be the standard for all states. I'm
Chad Groening.
If things do not go well today for Vice President Kamala Harris, it may have to do with her liberal policies. Talking about this on AFR's Today's Issues program, author Robert Gagnon said Harris's choice of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to be her running mate could also be an issue.
The only governor that would be on the same level as Tim Walz as a governor would be Governor Newsom in California. And I'm not even sure he reaches Tim Walz's level.
Gagnon said Walz has been radical on abortion and LGBT rights.
He was the leader of a gay-straight student alliance whose whole job was to promote homosexuality and transgenderism in the school and to treat any dissenters as the moral equivalent of hateful, ignorant bigots. He's created Minnesota to be a sanctuary state for transgender minors whose parents or whose state does not approve of gender transition for minors.
Other people that were on the supposed short list for running mates include Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania and Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. The latest from the murder trial of a suspect accused of killing 2 teenage Indiana girls who disappeared from a hiking trail in 2017. More from Lillian Wu.
The defense continues making its case in the trial of Richard Allen, charged in the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German, who disappeared from a hiking trail in Delphi, Indiana, nearly 8 years ago. Prosecutors say Allen confessed several times to their murders and also claimed he molested his sister and daughter. But Allen's sister and daughter taking the stand Monday to refute some of that, testifying he never molested them, despite what he allegedly said. Jurors also heard from a neuropsychologist that Allen did not fake or exaggerate his bizarre behavior while being held, and that prolonged isolation and lack of meaningful contact with his wife exacerbated his mental illness. Lillian Wu, Fox News.
More news online at afn.net and on the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
This election is critical, especially for the lives of the unborn. Select states have abortion on the ballot. They're more interested in protecting abortion instead of the innocent unborn children who can't speak for themselves. Maybe you know your state is one of the guilty ones, but if you're not sure, please find out before you vote. We have a list of states and the measures they're trying to pass. Visit afaaction.net/life to keep our preborn babies safe in the womb. afaaction.net/life.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network on this Tuesday, November the 5th, 2024. As we said last hour, finally, Election Day is here. And so we're talking about that today. Obviously, what's happening around the country with voting. Fred Jackson, Steve Paisley Jordahl. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, everybody.
And Ray Pritchard, raised in Kansas City. And we're in Tupelo. And tell us, Steve, what have you been You've been reading the news this morning?
Yeah, I've been just kind of keeping track of things. Can I give you the first election results we have of the day? Not a result like a decision like everything, but some updates on voting totals. With 50% of the vote counted, Guam has Harris ahead by 3 points. Harris 49, Trump 46. Now, before all you fatalists and pessimists go out there and start wailing and weeping and thinking the whole thing is over, in 2020, Biden took Guam by 14 points, and Harris is up by 3. So I think a lot of what's going to be watching tonight, because, we were just talking off the air about maybe New York. New York is not going to go for Trump. But what is going to be interesting is to see the margins, how far Donald Trump may have cut into blue states. So we're seeing a lot of that. I can also report, of course, of Dixfield Notch in
New Hampshire.
They voted 3-3, 3 for Harris, 3 for Trump, the 6 residents there. Last year, Biden swept. So, again, Republicans do real well in Dixie Notch. And a couple things. This also today, they were having some problems with the voting machines in Cambria County in Pennsylvania. They had to switch to paper ballots.
Where is that? Do you know?
Cambria. It's a Republican county. I don't know where geographically it is, but it's a Republican county, and they had software malfunction in the county's electronic voting system. It's preventing voters from scanning their ballots. So Cambria County Solicitor Ron Rapak said in a statement, the board has filed a court order extending the time to vote within Cambria County. No one should be turned away from the polls if they wish to cast their votes, and then they're going to paper ballots, and at least until they get the software glitch, if they are going to get it fixed.
There was also a bit of an incident this morning at 4 precincts in Philadelphia. They wouldn't let the Trump observers in, Republican observers in. And so what the Republicans have done this time is have a team of lawyers ready. So the team of lawyers went in, and these precincts had to allow Republican observers into the polling stations.
According to the head of the RNC, who put these things out, it's 8 counties in Pennsylvania, 8 voting precincts where Republican poll workers were not going to be let in until the lawyers showed up, and it's all been resolved.
Yeah.
And most of those were in and around Philadelphia?
The counties
where the Republican poll watchers were denied entry.
Is Philadelphia, York, Westmoreland, Allegheny, Lehigh, Cambria. Again, that's a Republican. Wyoming County and Lackawanna County.
That was a bizarre story. Y'all told me about that this morning because I'm thinking, how blatant can you be?
Yes.
Huh?
To keep one party's observers out.
Yeah, but that was resolved, but it shouldn't have had to have lawyers intervene.
Nope. Shouldn't
in the situation.
But it just raises the suspicions amongst some people that there's hanky-panky going on.
Right.
I get the impression, just from listening and seeing things like this, that the Republicans are way more prepared this election go around than they were in 2020.
They are. Yep, very true.
And listen, when you have a country of 330 or whatever it is million people, you're going to have some machines break down.
Yeah.
That's just going to happen.
Yep.
Because the computer systems are just not perfect. But it's when what you don't want to see is machines breaking down that favor one party or another all the time. You know what I'm saying? Or something of that nature.
What people don't want to see is some of the things that we saw in 2020.
Right.
When observers were told to go home.
Like in Atlanta.
And then the video cameras picked up when the observers left, these people started hauling out boxes.
Yeah.
People don't want to see that.
Right. Ray, any thoughts on that?
Well, 4 years ago, the Democrats swamped the Republicans in the early voting department. And let's face it, 4 years ago, they played the political game on the ground better than the Republicans did. But the Republicans have, I think, caught up, and they've got poll watchers and lawyers in places like Chicago and Detroit and Philadelphia and Milwaukee, Atlanta for sure, Maricopa County out there in Arizona, Clark County out there in Nevada. if there's any hanky-panky going on out there, the Republicans are going to be all over it this time around, which is good for democracy.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, and so we'll see how it goes. The other thing is, remember we were dealing with COVID 4 years ago.
Yes.
Right.
And what happened in Pennsylvania was all those folks voted absentee because of COVID, and they were almost all Democrats. And so Republicans won the day of, that is Election Day. Trump won handily on Election Day with 700,000 votes, I think, ahead. And then the counting began of the absentee ballots in Pennsylvania, and Biden ended up winning. I forgot what the final differential was, but that created a lot of suspicion among Republicans that that the Democrats they found out how many votes they needed. I mean, this is I'm just telling you, this sounds very conspiratorial, but this is how people think. They think, well, and Trump did too. He expressed it. I'm like, wait a minute, 700,000 ahead, and now I wake up the next day and you're telling me these votes that were counted in the middle of the night end up going all Democrat, all for Biden. You see how that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there, but I'm just saying that those kinds of things create suspicion among people that that the voting process may have been cooked, so to speak.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know. I have no evidence that it was. There's a few incidences here and there that you could show, but I'm talking about on a big level that was. And you know, you knew that the Democrats were going to have a big percentage of that vote because Republicans were turning out on voting day, and the Democrats were scaredy cats of COVID.
Yeah.
And they voted early. I'm teasing about that, but I mean that's how a lot of people thought it went down.
Yep.
So, all right, next story.
All right. So the Harris campaign has been quite conflicted on how to deal with Israel. In fact, you may recall, I don't know if we mentioned it on TI, but they were running two different commercials, political ads in Michigan as opposed to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, a very pro-Jewish ad. We support Israel's right to defend itself from terrorist Hamas. In Michigan, it was we sympathize with the Palestinian people, and so it was just two different messages depending on where the ad played. Well, former President Bill Clinton was on the campaign trail at a Harris Walz events this last week, and he was standing behind a Harris Walz sign. He has to be driving the campaign a little crazy because if they want somebody to be a little ambivalent about Israel, Bill Clinton was not. I want you to hear what he had to say, Cut 11.
All this was offered, including, I will say it again, a capital in East Jerusalem and 2 of the 4 quadrants of the old city of Jerusalem, confirmed by the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and his cabinet. And they said no. And I think part of it is that Hamas did not care about a homeland for the Palestinians. They wanted to kill Israelis and make Israel uninhabitable. Well, I got news for them. They were there first. Before their faith existed, they were there. In the time of King David, in the southernmost tribes had Judea and Samaria.
Bill Clinton's absolutely right on that, isn't he, Fred?
Absolutely right. Bill Clinton has read a little bit of his Bible.
Sunday school teacher.
Yeah, I tell you what. What he was referring to was that when Yasser Arafat headed the Palestinians, he was offered a great deal. Basically, giving them what they want. Gave them 90% of what they wanted. And as Bill Clinton said, Ehud Barak, the prime minister at the time, was in agreement with the deal. And the deal was that the Palestinians would get East Jerusalem as their capital, and they would also have access to 4 quadrants of the old city. And they turned it down. And Bill Clinton, you just heard him say, they had a great deal, but they didn't want that. And he says because Hamas did not want it, because Hamas wants to destroy the Israeli people. And then you just heard Bill Clinton say, and we have to remind people that Israel and the Jewish people were there first before the Palestinians.
He referenced King David.
Yes.
Ray.
Yeah.
That he was throwing down some good history guys and some good theology. Who knew? Who knew? Bill Clinton was remembering the Sunday school lessons he took years ago.
I think he's kind of proud of the fact that he was involved in that. I think that's probably why he said it. I mean,
yeah, just to be clear and remind people, is that most people know what he's talking about there, but during the Clinton presidency, he tried to negotiate a peace deal between Yasser Arafat, the PLO leader, and Palestinian Liberation Organization, and then the then Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, who preceded Benjamin Netanyahu, or maybe there was somebody in between. I'm not sure, but anyway, and so what Bill Clinton came to the realization was that the Palestinian leaders were not interested in peace, because he offered them, along with Israel's leader, a two-state solution that they say they want. Some of them say they won't, where Israel would be divided into something called, I guess, Palestine and something called Israel, and even Jerusalem would be divided. I quite frankly, now looking back, I'm stunned that Israeli leadership would even consider doing that, but they did at the time. This would have been in the 90s. And when offered that deal, what he's saying is the Palestinian leadership did not want that, which signified to Bill Clinton they don't want any kind of deal short of all the Jews being dead.
Yeah.
Or driven into the sea, and no existence of an Israeli Jewish state. That's precisely what he's saying right there.
That's right. That the Palestinians did not have any historic claim on there.
Right.
And that's why he said, no. The Jewish people were there first.
Right.
That land was given to the Jewish people. You have to remember, Islam, Muhammad, was many hundreds of years later that religion came into being.
Yeah. All right, you're listening to Today's Issues. Go ahead, Steve.
All right. Kamala Harris, I've said on this program, and I don't mean to be, I'm not joking when I say this, that there's not a lot of, she's been really skimping on policy specifics on a lot of stuff, because I don't think she knows a whole lot about being president. I'm not trying to be rude. I just think that her lack of response signals maybe a lack of depth. And I want to give you an example. This is over the summer. Kamala Harris was on with a social media influencer on a podcast. His name is Kareem Rama. He does Subway Takes, which has about 1 million listeners. And he invited Kamala Harris to come on, and they take one issue. It's a shorter podcast, and they debate it, and he wants opposing views. And so he asked Kamala Harris to come on and talk about the war in Gaza. He's an Arab, and he wants to know about Kamala's support for Israel. Talk to me about your support for Israel. The Harris administration said, no, we don't want to talk about that. We're going to talk about something else. Now, this show will take any topic. It doesn't, like pineapple on pizza might be one of the topics. So Kamala Harris came on and said that she would offer a hot take against people taking off their shoes on airplanes. He said, well, okay, fine. If that's the only thing we can get.
Are you saying Kamala Harris offered to talk about people taking off their shoes on airplanes?
The campaign agreed that Harris would offer a hot take against people taking off their shoes on airplanes. But, Ray, listen to this. She gets there, and she changes the subject again. And this is the subject that she chose with this Arab Muslim podcast host. Bacon is a spice.
No.
Yes.
No.
Think about it. It's pure flavor, she said. To which the
this sounds like a Babylon Bee kind of story.
It does. To which the podcast host said, "Well, No, I have to disagree. And she was finally, and she kept going on and on about bacon. She was finally reminded that Muslims don't eat bacon. Oh, okay. So then she decided to go anchovies on pizza, which he again didn't like. The interview was such a disaster that the guy scrapped it, left it on the cutting room floor, didn't even air it.
She moved. Are you saying she moved from bacon as a spice to anchovies on pizza?
That's right.
That's
Hot
reason
takes.
for her to be defeated right there, friend. Right there. Drawing the line.
Right.
Drawing the line right there.
Oh, my.
That's anyway.
Yeah.
If she wins today, I'll be stunned. To be honest with you, I'll be stunned if she wins. I think it'll be close, but I think enough Americans are looking at the two of them and saying, who do I want to be the leader of the CEO of America for 4 years? And I think enough of them are going to break his way, having had 4 years of a record to look at and is a known commodity, that is Trump, versus somebody who wasn't even wanted by the Democrats.
That's right.
She didn't even survive the first primary for the Democrats. I mean, she was like 8 out of 8. Remember that, or something like that. So she had to drop out before the first primary. She's only in there because they kicked Biden out, because we saw what happened at the debate and they knew he couldn't beat Trump. So they didn't have really a process to go through. They just she was a VP, should be the natural choice, but still others may have been a better candidates for the Democrats.
Remember what the only reason that she was the vice president, though,
what
is because Biden decided
I know.
he needed a DEI hire. He decided it was going to be a black woman no matter what.
Right. That's true. So but anyway, she is. I think today is a referendum more or less on whether you want Trump or not. You know, a lot of Americans don't want Trump anymore. I mean, that's just how they feel about it. And will enough of them be able to overcome those who think, like I was just suggesting, that is that he is a proven commodity as a leader of the country, and they're going to go with that over the unknown of Kamala Harris, who says some dingbat things.
This is anecdotal, and so I don't know how this is going to result in the polls, but this is one thing I do know, that it has become a lot more socially acceptable to back Donald Trump. I remember reporting in 2016 about some kid on a college campus who was wearing a Make America Great Again hat. Some student stole the hat and went to student services and wanted him kicked out of college. Now we've got people passing out MAGA hats on college campuses. You got Elon Musk, a tech giant who was a lifelong liberal, is now backing him. Joe Rogan, who was a liberal, is now backing Donald Trump. So it's become a lot more socially acceptable. He's not a pariah anymore. He's kind of the counterculture choice. And
well, I do think the fact that people are taking a look at Kamala Harris, and in addition to being an unknown comedy, a Freudian slip there, unknown commodity in terms of her leadership abilities, especially on a grand international scale, like being the leader of the free world, they see her and they go, I don't agree with her, but these crazy left-wing policies she's embraced, and she liked to talk about so proudly before she ran for president, like that ad Trump's running, where it's got Kamala Harris saying, "Yes, I want the taxpayer to pay for transgender surgeries for illegal immigrants who are in prison."
Yep.
What kind of person says that's a good idea for the federal government to pay for that?
Yeah.
Kamala Harris does. Remember, she said everybody should have access to money to have transgendered surgeries.
Yeah.
She's kind of been a little, I don't know if she's changed her position on that, but she refused to acknowledge or reinsert that. She was talking to a transgender crowd. I have a feeling like the two Israel ads, whoever she's in front of, she's going to say whatever they want to hear.
Right. Right. Next story. You got another story?
Yeah, let's lighten up things a little bit here.
Do that.
Because we keep talking about, you were talking about Kamala and the word salad and everything. Do you have a birthday coming up or know somebody that has a birthday coming up, need a present?
Well, I think we all do.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But if you need a present, I've got something for you.
Okay.
It's a new Alexa, and I want to let you hear it. This is the ad for it. This is cut 13.
Do you like your Amazon Echo, but wish its answers were more confusing? Introducing Amazon Echo Calm Alexa Edition. This great new device will just give you a long, rambling answer to anything you ask.
Calm Alexa, what's the weather like today?
Weather is big, weather is exciting, and did you know that files are stored in the cloud? Your files, they're all up there, up in the cloud. In the cloud. So, the climate is changing, and that's bad.
Oh, hey, Calm Alexa, what time is it?
The significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. When you think about it, there is a great significance to the passage of time.
Thanks, Calm Alexa.
Calm Alexa has got you covered.
That's clever.
Oh.
Was there one?
Yeah, there's one more, but that's okay.
In that clip, you mean?
Yeah. They asked her, Alexa, how many illegal aliens did you let through the border? And then the answer is,
a cackle?
Yeah.
A classic cackle?
Yes.
All right. Fred, tell us about what's going to be going on this evening here on American Family Radio.
At 6:05 Central Time this evening, the gang will be here. Tim and Ed and Wesley and Walker, myself will be here. Chris and Steve will be taking care of our newscast through the evening, but we'll be here because the polls will have closed for about an hour in a couple of states, Kentucky and Indiana, in portions of that state, those two states. And then there's a whole lot of other states along the East Coast where polls will be closing. So the results will start coming in. And let's face it, folks, we've been talking for months about this election campaign, about where the candidates stand on the issue. Well, today and tonight we get the verdict from the voters of America. And I tell you what, tremendous interest in this election. A lot of people have been saying, Tim and gang, that this is one of the most pivotal elections in American history. We have two parties that have very different views as to where the country should be going. And tonight, the voters passed their verdict. We'll be here to tell you the story.
Yeah. All right, Ray, thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks to Fred, Steve, Chris, Brent Creeley, our producer. See, Jenna was with us. Frank Turek was with us today. We thank them for being guests here on the program. And keep listening to AFR, and we'll see you later on this evening.
Amen.